Good morning, it's January 27th, and this is To My Liberal Friends. How many remember when Joe Biden told us inflation was transitory, would soon dissipate? Well, not only did it not dissipate, it soared to a high of just over 9%. And while Biden and his fellow Democrats were telling us that it was coming down, did any of them really believe it was going to stay at that level? They never mentioned that the total amount of inflation over the past 4 years totaled up to over 21%. And that means the average cost of goods and services that used to cost about $100 was now costing over $120. And some of them, depending on what you're getting, cost more. When it became apparent that the public was not buying this phony message, they started gaslighting us by saying we should be thankful we're not doing better than other countries in Europe. Forget about how bad things were for you. Just be glad you did not live somewhere else where it was worse. Both of those explanations were echoed by the liberal media. They parroted every excuse that Biden and his spokesman could keep up. They talked about the investment Biden made in his infrastructure bill and even had the gall to talk about the Inflation Reduction Act that even Democrats had to admit in the end had nothing to do with inflation but was simply a climate bill. The Biden administration pushed for a massive EV charging station program to the tune of $7.8 billion in that infrastructure bill. Those funds were to build thousands of these charging stations to go with the EV mandates that were being put in place by Joe Biden. Guess how many of those charging stations have been built? If you guessed zero, you'd be correct. Now, the obvious question would be why? The charger industry blames the delays mostly on the labyrinth of new contracting and performance requirements they have to navigate to get the federal funds. While federal officials have authorized more than $2 billion of the funds to be sent to the states, fewer than half of the states have even started to take bids from contractors to build the chargers, let alone begin construction. And who do you think created all those hurdles? You guessed the Biden administration, you'd be correct again. Now that Trump is back in the White House, the media is changing their tune. Suddenly they want to talk about the cost of everything. Trump promised during the campaign he would bring down the cost of groceries, and even though it's been in office for less than 1 week, some of the media think those prices should have collapsed immediately. No more talk about inflation coming down. It should have been eliminated by now, according to them. No more discussion of how we're better off in Europe. Now it's all about Trump and why isn't he delivering? The best example of this sudden switch by the media happened on CBS this week. I watched Margaret Brennan interviewing President J.D. Vance. She thought she could corner Vance with some gotcha questions. My guess is she's not watched Vance very much and assumed he would stutter and serve up some word salad like his predecessor, Kamala Harris. Her first question was, quote, "You campaigned on lowering price for consumers. We've seen all these executive orders. Which one lower prices?" End quote. Well, Vance apparently was ready for the question and responded in a way that Brennan could not have expected. He stressed that some of the things being ordered by President Trump are those that encourage capital investment, which lead to jobs, which ultimately empowers the consumers, the American public, to afford the things they need. So Brennan continued with her gotcha brand of journalism. Quote, "So grocery prices aren't going to come down," end quote. Vance just stared at her for a second, then responded, quote, "No, Margaret, prices are going to come down, but it's going to take a little bit of time. The president's been president for all of 5 days. I think that in those 5 days, he's accomplished more than Joe Biden did in 4 years. And it's been an incredible breakneck pace of activity," end quote. And Vance didn't stop there. He said, "You asked specifically what executive orders are going to lower prices. All the stuff that we've been doing on energy, to explore more energy reserves, to develop more energy resources in the United States of America. One of the main drivers of increased prices under the Biden administration is that we had massive increases in energy prices. Donald Trump has already taken multiple executive actions that are going to lower energy prices, and I do believe that means consumers are going to see lower prices at the pump and at the grocery store, but it's going to take a little bit of time," end quote. Brenda had been stopped in her tracks and tried to pivot mentioning the price of eggs. Of course, she did not mention that the reason behind the dramatic price of eggs was due to the bird flu that had decimated the flocks of birds for egg producers. And I'm sure that once the producers are able to increase their flocks, the price of eggs comes down. Brenda will ignore eggs and try to use some other straw man. Vance kept backing Brennan into a corner. He explained, quote, "Well, but Margaret, how does bacon get to the grocery store? It comes on trucks that are fueled by diesel fuel. If the diesel is way too expensive, the bacon's going to become more expensive. So if we lower energy prices, we're going to see lower prices for consumers." So he was reinforcing the administration's commitment to tackling the root cause of inflation. After the Biden administration's waging war on fossil fuels for 4 years, Vance was simply pointing out that by encouraging oil exploration and natural gas, Trump expects the price of energy to come down. Now, I want you to think about this exchange between Vance and Brennan. The media's gotten used to a president who did not talk to the media, And when he did, it was highly scripted and controlled by staff. They got used to a vice president who could not form whole sentences and talked in circles. Now they have Donald Trump and J.D. Vance, who seem ready to take any and all questions at every chance they get. Trump may be ramble at times and get his facts confused, but with J.D. Vance, they get an articulate politician who can fend off any of these attempts to play gotcha and connect with the American public as we respond to questions. The script's been flipped, and suddenly it's the media that's on the defensive, and they don't like it. This has been To My Liberal Friends. Thanks for listening.